The night sky burned with fire. Smoke rose in black clouds covering the stars. The land was broken, cracked by bombs, and the ground smelled of ash. Machines of war lay silent, broken like dead animals. The battlefield was no longer alive. But it was not silent. Wind howled across the ruins, carrying the smell of blood and metal. In the middle of this wasteland stood a single man, a human warrior. His armor was scratched. His weapon was heavy in his hands, but his eyes did not close. He had seen many battles, too many, but tonight was different. Tonight he stood alone. The enemy was near. He knew it. They were giants, creatures from another world, with bodies strong as iron and voices like thunder. They came to crush, to burn, to erase humanity from the stars. All other soldiers had fallen back, some dead, some running to safety, but not him. This one man remained where the earth still smoked. He did not run, he did not hide. He stood tall against the darkness. The silence was heavy. Every breath felt like a drum in his chest. Every shadow looked like it could move. He looked at the horizon where the sky glowed red. Somewhere beyond that fire, the giant was coming. The ground itself seemed to whisper of its steps. Each second stretched longer. Each moment pulled him deeper into fear. But also deeper into courage. He remembered his people. Families hiding underground, waiting for news, waiting for hope. Children who still believed that heroes could save them. He thought of the faces of soldiers who had fallen. Men and women who once stood beside him. Now their voices were silent, their courage buried in the dirt. He carried their memory on his shoulders. That was why he could not run. If he ran, then all their sacrifice was for nothing. If he ran, then there was no story left for humanity. So he stayed. The air grew heavier. The stars disappeared behind smoke. A tremor passed through the ground. The man felt it in his boots. The enemy was closer now. The alien giant was not a shadow anymore. It was real. He heard the sound, deep and powerful, like mountains grinding together. The steps of something too large, too strong, something that no human should ever face alone. His hands tightened around his weapon. Sweat rolled down his face, but his feet did not move. His mind screamed at him to flee, but his heart whispered one word: stay. The night seemed to hold its breath. Even the wind grew quiet. The warrior's eyes fixed on the horizon. His chest rose and fell slowly, steady, like a soldier carved from stone. And then at last he saw it, a figure rising from the smoke, towering higher than the ruins. The alien giant stepped forward, each footfall shaking the broken earth. Its body shone with strange armor, dark as night, glowing with lines of fire. Its eyes burned like twin suns, staring down at the tiny human. For a moment, time stopped. The battlefield became a stage, with only two actors left, one small, one massive, one fragile, one unstoppable. But both facing each other, the human did not kneel, did not cry, did not beg. He simply stood, sword in hand, gaze unbroken, and in that silence, the giant paused. It tilted its head, almost in curiosity. Why did this man not flee? Why did this small creature dare to stand when all others had fallen? The warrior's breath was steady. He knew this was the moment. He was only a man, but in this moment, he carried all of humanity within him. He whispered under his breath words no one else could hear. Come then. His voice was low but strong. Let the stars witness who we are. The giant's shadow fell across him, covering him in darkness. The battlefield trembled as the alien giant took another step closer. The man did not move. He was ready to face death, but in his stillness, there was no weakness, there was power. The kind of power that no machine, no alien, no monster could understand. The power of courage. And so in the middle of a dead battlefield, beneath a sky of fire and smoke, one human warrior stood alone and waited for the clash that would shake the stars. The ground shook again, louder this time. Each step made the ruins tremble, made stones roll across the broken earth. Dust rose in clouds with every thunderous sound. The human warrior stood still, his heart beating fast but his body refusing to move. He had seen many enemies before, but none like this. The size, the power, the weight of the giant's presence filled the battlefield like a storm. The giant came closer, its figure no longer a blur. Its armor glowed faintly with strange lights pulsing like veins of fire. Its shoulders were wide, its hands massive, each finger tipped with claws of steel. Its face was covered by a mask carved from black metal, hiding its true form, but its eyes, two burning orbs, stared down at the lone warrior. They did not blink, they did not turn away. They looked at him as if he was the only thing in the entire world. The human gripped his weapon tighter. He felt small, like an ant standing before a mountain, and yet inside something refused to break. He remembered the stories told to him when he was a child. Stories of heroes who faced monsters larger than life. Those were not just stories now. They were living through him. This was his moment, his test. His place in history. The giant finally stopped, its shadow swallowing the man. The silence was sharp. As if the air itself feared to move, the two stood only a few paces apart. The man's breath slow and heavy, the giant's chest rising like a mountain with each inhale. Then for the first time the giant spoke. Its voice was deep, echoing like thunder across the ruins. Small human, why do you stand? Why do you not run? Why do you not kneel? The man's lips tightened. He could feel the weight of the words pressing down on him, but he did not bow his head. Instead, he lifted his chin and looked directly into the burning eyes of the alien. I do not run, he said softly, but his voice carried through the night. Because someone must stand. The giant tilted its head, the sound of metal grinding against metal. For a moment, the battlefield was frozen in that exchange. The giant who had destroyed armies, the man who stood alone, both watching each other. Neither moving, neither breaking, the giant gave a low rumble, something between a growl and a laugh. It was not used to defiance. Humans always screamed, always begged, always broke before the end, but this one did not. This one spoke with fire in his eyes. The giant leaned closer, its massive form bending like a dark mountain. You are not afraid of death, human, it said. Its words cut through the air. You are not afraid of me. The man's grip tightened on his weapon. His legs shook with the force of the giant's presence, but his voice did not tremble. I am afraid, he whispered. But fear is not stronger than duty. The words echoed, bouncing against the broken walls and silent machines. Even the wind seemed to pause to listen for the first time. The giant did not strike, it did not crush, did not kill. Instead, it studied him. There was something strange in its burning eyes now. Not rage, not hatred, but something closer to respect. The battlefield that had seen so much death now carried a new weight. A moment that felt bigger than war. A meeting of two warriors from different worlds. Enemies by blood, but bound by something older. Something deeper, the code of courage. The silence stretched long, the night seemed endless. And then the giant slowly lowered its weapon. The human's heart raced. Was this a trick, or was this something else? The giant's voice rolled like distant thunder. Perhaps your kind is not as weak as I believed, it said. Perhaps you are more than prey. The man's chest rose and fell as he steadied his breath. He had not expected mercy. He had not expected words, and yet here he stood, face to face with a creature that could end him in one blow. And it was speaking to him as if he mattered, as if he was more than just another soldier. The battlefield that had been filled with death now whispered with the sound of possibility. But possibility is dangerous. Trust can be a blade sharper than any sword. The warrior knew this moment could decide everything. If he answered wrong, he would die. If he showed weakness, humanity would lose more than a battle. It would lose its honor. So he stood tall, though his body ached, though his mind screamed. He looked up at the giant and said nothing more. Sometimes silence was the strongest answer. The alien giant stared down, its eyes glowing like fire against the dark sky. It did not strike, it did not move, it only stood, and in that stillness the battlefield itself seemed to wait. The ruins, the smoke, the broken stars above, all holding their breath for what would come next. The war was not over, not yet, but something had changed. In the lonely battlefield under a sky of fire, a human warrior and an alien giant had faced each other, and for the first time, neither side had attacked. It was not peace, not friendship, not yet. But it was the beginning of something the galaxy had never seen before. The beginning of a story that would echo through the stars. The giant's eyes burned like two suns fixed on the human below. Its armor glowed with faint lines of fire, its shadow stretching across the ground. The human warrior felt the weight of that gaze pressing down on him. His body was trembling inside, his heart loud in his chest. But he refused to show it. Fear was there, yes, crawling up his spine like ice, but fear was not the master of his spirit. The battlefield around them was silent. No cries, no weapons firing. Only the sound of the giant's breathing, deep, heavy, like mountains grinding against each other. The human's breathing was smaller, lighter, but steady. He knew one wrong move could mean his death. But he also knew that his courage had already done something powerful. It had made the giant pause. The alien giant spoke again, its voice low and heavy. "You should be nothing but prey to me, human," it said. "I could crush you with one hand." The human's grip tightened around his weapon. His feet dug into the dirt, steady like roots in the ground. He answered, his voice calm. "Maybe, but prey does not stand. And prey does not look into your eyes." The giant tilted its head. As if trying to understand, it was a creature built for war. Raised to conquer, trained to destroy. Fear was a language it knew well, a taste it had consumed from 1,000 enemies. But this human spoke another language, one made of courage. And courage was something the giant could not ignore. The human's mind raced. He thought of his home, far away under the broken sky. He thought of his people hiding in the dark, waiting for someone to give them hope. He thought of all the battles he had survived, all the friends he had lost, and he thought of this moment. Standing before an enemy too large to fight, courage did not mean he was not afraid. Courage meant he stood anyway. The giant took another step closer, the ground shaking beneath its weight. Its massive shadow swallowed the human completely. "Your courage is strange," it said. "It shines while your body shakes. It grows while your voice is quiet." The warrior's eyes narrowed, his heart hammering. He said, "Courage is not about size, not about strength, not about who can crush who. Courage is about standing when you want to run." The alien giant rumbled, a sound that was almost like laughter. Its burning eyes glowed brighter for a moment. "No one has ever spoken to me this way," it said. "No one has ever faced me without begging for life." The human's jaw tightened, his breath sharp in the cold air. "I am not no one," he replied. "I am a warrior of Earth, and I will not beg." The battlefield seemed to shift with those words. The ruins echoed with their weight. Even the smoke in the air seemed to pause. The alien giant stared at him, and for the first time, it felt something unusual, not just power, not just victory, but respect. The warrior had planted a seed inside the giant's mind, a seed of doubt about its own truth, a seed of wonder about what humans really were. But respect was not enough to end danger. The giant's hand moved slowly, rising like a wall. Its claws gleamed with firelight, sharp enough to tear steel. The human's weapon felt small, almost useless in comparison. His body screamed at him to run, to flee, to live another day. But his heart was louder. "Stay," it whispered again. "Stay." The warrior did not lift his weapon yet. He kept it at his side, but ready. His stance was not of fear, but of waiting. He looked into the giant's eyes and said, "If you strike me, strike, but know this. I do not stand here for myself, I stand for my people. I stand so they can live. Even if I fall, they will remember that one man stood when all others ran." The words cut deeper than any blade. The alien giant's hand froze midair. The silence was endless. The warrior's voice had turned his fear into fire. That fire burned brighter than the alien's armor, brighter than its glowing eyes. The battlefield became more than just broken ground. It became a place of truth where courage stood against fear. The giant lowered its hand slowly, the ground trembling as its claws sank back into the dirt. Its deep voice rolled like thunder. "You are small, human, but you are not weak," it said. "You carry more strength in your spirit than some carry in their armies." The human's chest rose and fell, his breath heavy. He did not smile. He did not cheer, but his eyes shone with steady fire. Fear still lived inside him, but it no longer controlled him. He had looked at death, and he had not bowed in that moment. Something unspoken passed between them. The giant knew it, and the human knew it. They were enemies, but they were also something else now. Two warriors who understood the same truth, that courage was stronger than fear, that respect could be born in the heart of war. The night held its breath once more. The ruins were silent witnesses, the stars hidden behind smoke. And in the middle of that silence, the human warrior stood tall. Fear had not left him, but courage had taken its place. The alien giant's gaze softened just a little, and for the first time in its long life it wondered, perhaps courage was a power greater than size. Perhaps fear was not the final master of war. Perhaps in this small warrior, there was something the galaxy had never seen before. The battlefield lay still, smoke curled in the air, drifting like ghosts between the ruins. The human warrior stood firm, his weapon heavy in his hands. His eyes locked on the alien giant. The giant did not strike, though its size and power could crush the man in a heartbeat. Instead, it stared down with a strange light in its burning eyes. It was not anger, not hatred, but something else, something rare. The silence stretched long. The warrior could hear his own breathing, the pounding of his heart, yet he did not look away. He would not give the giant the satisfaction of fear. And then at last the giant's voice rolled across the field, deep, thunderous, carrying both challenge and curiosity. "Why do you humans fight when you cannot win?" it asked. "Why do you throw yourselves against walls of iron, knowing you will break?" The human's jaw tightened. He lifted his head a little higher, his voice steady. "We fight because we must," he said. "Victory is not always the reason. Sometimes the reason is simply to stand." The giant tilted its head, its glowing eyes narrowing. "To stand," it repeated, as if tasting the words. "To die for nothing." The warrior shook his head. "No, not for nothing," he answered. "For those who cannot fight, for the weak, for the children, for hope itself if no one stands. Then there is nothing left if no one resists. Then we are already gone." His words carried through the broken air, clear and sharp. For the first time in its long life, the alien giant hesitated. It had fought endless battles, crushed countless enemies, but none had spoken like this human. None had dared to face death with such fire in their voice. The giant's hand lowered slowly, its massive claws digging into the dirt. Its voice softened just a little. "You speak of courage as if it is greater than strength," it said. "You speak as if your spirit matters more than your body." The human's eyes did not waver. "Because it does," he said. "Bodies fall, walls crumble, empires die. But courage spreads, it lights another heart, then another. It does not die, even when the one who carried it is gone." The alien giant's chest rumbled with a sound that was not quite laughter, not quite growl. It was the sound of something breaking and changing inside it. Then something impossible happened. The giant lowered its weapon, letting the massive blade rest against the earth. The battlefield trembled with the weight, but the warrior did not move. The giant's voice rolled low, almost thoughtful. "Perhaps your kind is not as weak as I believed," it said. "Perhaps you are worth more than prey." The warrior's breath caught. He had expected death, he had expected battle, but not this. The giant straightened, its glowing eyes burning brighter. It spoke again, and this time its words were different. They were not threats, not warnings, but an offer. "Stand with me, human," it said. "Fight not against me, but beside me, together. We can tear down the enemies of your kind together. We can burn across the stars." The words hit the human like a storm. He had not imagined such a choice. His mind raced. His thoughts clashed like swords in the dark. Stand with the alien and he might save his people. Stand with the alien and he might be called traitor. The weight of the decision pressed heavy on his shoulders. It was not only his life at stake, it was the story of his people. It was the memory of the fallen. The giant leaned closer, its shadow swallowing the man. Its voice thundered again. "You are brave, human, but bravery alone will not save your world. Your courage is strong, but it cannot stop the fire of war. With me it can, with me. You will have power beyond your small frame with me. You will not stand alone." The human's grip on his weapon trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of choice. The faces of his comrades flashed in his mind. The children, the families, the voices crying for hope. Could he betray them by joining the very enemy they had fought? Or could he save them by choosing the path no one else would dare? The silence grew heavy once more. Every heartbeat felt like a hammer in his chest. He looked into the burning eyes of the alien giant. There was no lie in them, no trick. The offer was real. The warrior felt the edge of his fear, but he also felt the pull of destiny. Perhaps this was why he had survived when so many had fallen. Perhaps this was why he had been left standing on this battlefield. Not to die, but to choose not to end, but to begin something greater. The wind carried the smoke across them. The ruins whispered with memory. The stars hidden above seemed to wait. And in that moment, the human knew. This was more than a battle, this was a turning point, a choice that could shape the fate of two worlds, and perhaps the fate of the galaxy itself. The giant's voice came again, softer, like distant thunder fading. "Decide, warrior of Earth," it said, "stand against me, and fall as all before you, or stand beside me, and rise higher than any human has ever risen." The human's heart was fire, his soul was stone, his eyes narrowed, his breath steady. The choice was his and his alone, and in the silence of the broken battlefield, the courage of one man weighed against the destiny of stars. The warrior stood in silence. The battlefield around him was broken and dead, yet his heart was alive with fire. The alien giant's offer still echoed in his ears. "Stand beside me," it had said. The words were heavy, dangerous, and filled with meaning. It was more than an invitation, it was a test. A choice that could change everything. The human gripped his weapon tighter, his knuckles white, his breath sharp. He thought of his people, hidden in the shadows of ruined cities. He thought of the children who had never seen peace. He thought of the soldiers who had died with honor. Was he about to betray them? Or was he about to save them in the only way left? The alien giant leaned closer, its massive form blotting out what little light the burning sky gave. Its voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Do not waste time, warrior of Earth," it said. "The war does not wait, the stars do not wait. With me you will have power, without me you will have death." The human's chest rose and fell. His mind was a storm of questions. If he refused, he would die here. If he accepted, he might live, but at what cost? Would his people see him as savior or as traitor? Would history remember him as a warrior, or curse him as a betrayer? The weight of that thought pressed hard against his heart. But then he remembered something. The eyes of the giant not filled with cruelty. Not this time, they carried respect. Raw and strange. The alien had crushed armies, yet had lowered its weapon for him. That meant something. That meant this was no trick of weakness. This was truth. The warrior raised his head. His voice was steady, though inside he was torn. "If I stand with you," he asked, "will you stand with me? Not above me, not as a master, but beside me. Will you honor the lives of my people, or will you use them as tools for your war?" The giant's burning eyes narrowed. It was not used to being questioned, not used to being challenged by something so small. But it did not strike. Instead, it answered, its voice deep as the ground itself. "Beside you, warrior, for the first time. Beside one who does not fear me, I will fight not as your master, but as your ally." The human's chest tightened. He had not expected such words. His mind searched for weakness, for lies, but he found none. He realized then that even giants could carry loneliness. Even monsters of war could crave respect, and in him, the giant had found what it had never known, an equal. The warrior lowered his weapon slowly. The silence between them grew heavy. He whispered more to himself than to the alien. "Then so be it, I will fight with you. Not for power, but for survival. Not for conquest, but for the future of my people." The battlefield seemed to shift with those words. The air grew sharper, alive with something new. The impossible had happened. A human and an alien giant had chosen to stand together. Two enemies who should have destroyed one another, now bound by a choice that defied the stars themselves. The giant's chest rumbled with something like pride. It lifted its head and let out a roar, a sound that shook the ruins and echoed into the night. The warrior stood firm, the sound passing over him like a storm. He was no longer just a soldier waiting to die. He was something greater now, a bridge between two worlds. The alien giant lowered its massive hand, open, palm forward, not as a threat but as a gesture. The warrior looked at it, the claws gleaming like steel. It was like staring at the hand of a god. Slowly, carefully, he raised his own hand and placed it against the giant's claw. The difference in size was overwhelming, yet in that moment it was not about size. It was about choice. The bond was sealed. The earth beneath them seemed to hold its breath. The stars hidden behind smoke seemed to wait. History itself leaned forward to watch. For this was the moment of the impossible alliance. The moment when one human warrior and one alien giant chose unity over destruction, and though war still raged across the galaxy, here in the ruins, a spark of something new was born. The human lowered his hand, his weapon still at his side. He looked at the giant and said, "If we fight together, then we fight with honor. No slaughter of the helpless. No burning of the weak if you stand with me. You stand for them too." The alien giant gave a low growl, but it was not anger. It was agreement. "So be it," it said. "Warrior of Earth, you have my word." The silence returned. But it was not the silence of fear. It was the silence before a storm. The warrior's heart was steady now. The path was dangerous, but it was chosen. Together they would walk it. Together they would face what was to come. And so in the ashes of a dying battlefield, an alliance was born. An alliance no one had believed possible. An alliance that would change the fate of two species. The impossible alliance of a human warrior and an alien giant. The ruins shook once more, but this time, it was not the steps of the alien giant alone. It was the sound of two warriors moving together. The human warrior and the alien giant stepped forward. Side by side, enemies only moments ago, now allies in the fire of war. The battlefield ahead was alive again. From the smoke rose machines of the enemy, tall war engines with legs of steel. Their eyes glowed red, their weapons charged with deadly energy. The ground cracked as they marched, their heavy guns already turning toward the human and the giant. The war was not waiting. The war was here, the alien giant roared, the sound like thunder rolling across mountains. It lifted its weapon, a massive blade glowing with firelight. Beside it, the human raised his own weapon, small in comparison but burning with purpose. The difference in size was great, but the fire in their hearts was equal. They charged together, the enemy machines fired, blasts of light tearing through the ground. Explosions shook the ruins, scattering dust and fire. But the giant swung its blade, cutting through one machine with a single strike. Metal screamed as the war engine split in two, falling like broken towers. The human darted forward fast and precise. He leapt onto another machine, driving his blade into a weak point where armor was thin. Sparks burst, the machine collapsed. Together they moved like storm and lightning. The giant crushed with overwhelming force, the human struck with speed and skill. Where one was too slow, the other was swift. Where one was too small, the other was immense. The battlefield trembled at their unity. The enemy roared back. Alien soldiers poured from the shadows, smaller than the giant but taller than the human. Their weapons spat fire, their claws gleamed with bloodlust, but the human did not falter. He spun through them, his blade flashing. His strikes cutting deep, the giant roared again, swinging its massive arm, sweeping whole ranks aside like dust. Together they carved a path unstoppable, unbreakable. The other human soldiers, hidden and broken, lifted their heads. They saw the impossible. One of their own fighting not against the alien giant, but with it hope sparked in their hearts. If one man could stand with such a creature, then perhaps they could rise again. Shouts filled the air, cries of courage. Scattered warriors picked up their weapons and joined the charge. The tide was shifting. The alien giant noticed it too. It turned its burning eyes toward the human beside it. "You bring them back," it said. "Your courage spreads like fire." The human's chest heaved. Sweat and blood on his face, but his voice was steady. "I told you, courage does not die, it moves from one heart to another. That is why I stand." The giant swung its blade again, cleaving another machine in half. Its deep voice rolled like thunder. "Then today I see it with my own eyes." The human leapt onto the fallen wreck, driving his weapon through another alien soldier. His eyes burned with fire. "Then today you fight not as my enemy, but as my brother." The word struck deep. The battlefield seemed to tremble with them. The giant's roar shook the sky. Together they fought harder, faster, stronger. Every strike of the giant was followed by the sharp edge of the human's blade. Every step the giant took was matched by the human's courage, and the enemy began to falter. Fear crept into the enemy ranks. They had never seen such unity, a human and a giant fighting as one. It broke their certainty, it shattered their pride. Their weapons fired less, their movements slowed. The tide of battle was turning. One final war engine rose from the smoke. Bigger than the rest, armored in black steel. Glowing with crimson fire, its weapons crackled with energy, ready to crush both man and giant. The alien giant stepped forward. Blade raised, but the human touched its arm. "Not alone," he said. The giant looked down at him, and then, for the first time, it nodded. They charged together, the machine fired. Explosions tearing through the ground. The giant swung its blade. The human leapt onto its shoulder from high above. The human jumped onto the machine, driving his weapon deep into its glowing core. At the same moment, the giant's blade smashed through its armor. Light exploded across the battlefield, fire and metal raining down. The machine screamed and then fell silent. When the smoke cleared, the human and the giant stood together, side by side. Around them, the enemy was broken. The battlefield was theirs. The human's breath was heavy, his body aching. The giant's chest rose and fell like mountains after a storm. But both still stood. The other soldiers stared in awe. Some whispered, some shouted. They had witnessed the impossible, a man and a giant fighting as one. The legend was born before their eyes. The giant turned its burning gaze down at the human, its voice deep and certain. "Today we are not enemies. Today we are more." The human lifted his head, his voice strong though his body was weak. Today we showed them that courage and strength together can change the stars. The battlefield fell into silence once more. But it was not the silence of death. It was the silence of victory. And in that silence a new story began. The story of a human warrior and an alien giant. Two enemies turned brothers fighting side by side. The battlefield was quiet for a breath. Smoke drifted across broken ground, glowing faintly from burning wrecks. The human warrior stood beside the alien giant, their bodies scarred but unbroken. Around them lay the remains of enemy machines and fallen soldiers. But the war was not finished. Not yet. The enemy regrouped, their forces pulling back. Forming new lines in the distance, their commanders shouted orders in a language harsh and sharp. War engines rose again, smaller than the one they had destroyed, but still deadly. Alien soldiers raised their weapons, their eyes glowing with hate and fear. The human looked at them and then looked at his own people. The scattered human soldiers had gathered. They stared at him and the giant with wide eyes. Hope flickered in their faces for the first time in months. Their hands tightened around their weapons. The fire of courage had returned. One man had stood and now many were ready to rise. The alien giant noticed it too. It lowered its massive blade, its voice rolling deep. "They are watching you," it said. "They will follow, not me. But you," the human turned his head. Sweat running down his face, he saw their eyes on him. Waiting for his word, his voice came strong, though his body trembled. "Then let them see we will not fall. Let them see we will fight together." The words carried across the ruins. The soldiers raised their voices in answer. Shouting, cheering, their cries cut through the smoke. Cutting through fear, even the alien giant paused. Feeling the power of those voices, the battlefield itself seemed to shift. The balance of war was moving. The enemy forces began their march. Their footsteps shook the earth. Their weapons glowed with deadly fire. But this time the humans did not shrink. This time they stood taller. Because they were not alone, they had the giant. And more than that, they had hope. The alien giant lifted its blade. Roaring into the night, the sound shook the sky. The human warrior raised his weapon high, his voice cutting sharp. "Forward!" he shouted. The soldiers charged, and for the first time, humans and an alien giant ran together into battle. The clash was thunder. Blades met claws, guns roared. Explosions tore the ground. The giant cut through enemy machines with sweeping strikes, its strength breaking walls of metal like paper. The human darted through soldiers, fast and sharp, his blade finding weak points, his courage pushing him beyond exhaustion. Where the giant struck fear, the human lit courage. Together they were storm and fire. The enemy began to falter. Their weapons fired, but their aim wavered. Their steps slowed, their shouts cracked. They had never seen such defiance. Never seen prey turn into predators. Never seen one of their own kind, the giant, fight beside a human. Doubt spread through their lines like cracks in glass. The human soldiers pressed harder. They shouted as they fought. Every strike carried the strength of new belief. Every step forward was victory. They were no longer fighting for survival alone. They were fighting for something greater, a future. The alien giant saw it too. Between swings of its blade, it spoke to the human. "This is the turning," it said. "Your courage bends the battle. Your voice changes more than my blade." The human's chest heaved, his weapon slick with blood. He looked up at the towering figure beside him. "Then together we will finish this," he said. The enemy commanders roared in anger. They sent their strongest forward, tall warriors clad in heavy armor, weapons glowing with deadly light. They charged straight for the human and the giant. The battlefield seemed to hold its breath. This was the moment, the test, the turning point. The giant met them head-on, its blade clashing with theirs, sparks flying like stars. The ground shook with every strike. The human darted in and out, striking where the giant's blade could not reach. Together they cut down one, then another. The fight was fierce, brutal, endless, but step by step, strike by strike, they pushed through. The human's body screamed with pain, his arms heavy, his legs weak, but his spirit burned brighter. He thought of the children hiding underground. He thought of the faces of the fallen. He thought of the promise he had made. And he did not stop. The giant's roar filled the sky. With one massive strike, it split the last armored warrior. The battlefield shook. The enemy line broke. Panic spread through them, their cries filling the night. The human raised his weapon high. "Forward!" he shouted again, and the soldiers surged, unstoppable. The enemy began to run, Their machines pulled back, their soldiers scattering, the humans pressed on. Courage flooding their veins. The battlefield that had been a place of despair was now a place of victory. Not complete, not final, but real. The tide had turned. The human dropped to one knee. Gasping for breath, the giant bent low, its burning eyes fixed on him. "You have done what no one thought possible," it said. "You have turned fear into strength." The human forced himself to stand again, his body trembling. "This is not my strength alone," he said. "This is ours." The battlefield fell quiet once more, but this time it was not silence of death. It was the silence after a storm, the silence of change. The war was far from over, but tonight, in the ashes of the battlefield, a turning point had been carved into history by one human warrior and an alien giant fighting side by side.